It was only supposed to be a part-time job, but one man soon found himself traveling the world. Corey Adkins tells us his story in this week's Northern Michigan in Focus.
This is how they unload the logs. 45 years later, I was still out there promising my folks I was going to get a real job someday, and maybe someday I will.
Oh man, talk about a life.
My name is Lon Calloway. I'm a retired merchant mariner, and I spent over 45 years working all over the United States, Alaska, the Gulf of Mexico, on a wide variety of vessels, 85 in total.
It all started when Lon simply wanted to make some money for college. But that all changed when he found that if he worked as a relief worker, working on the boats gave him a lot of freedom.
Oh, the money and just the flexibility of being able to kind of work when I wanted. I'd get relationships with dispatchers from all these different companies, and then I could call them up, tell them that I was available, and they could tell me if they needed somebody, and I could usually get a job within 24 hours of making a phone call.
And he learned quickly that not all these jobs were smooth sailing.
You had to work it. I had to make sure that they knew I'd take a bad job to get a good job. So I had some pretty horrible boats from time to time. For instance, a tugboat in Alaska named the Lutak Pride. It had garbage bags taped up to the ceiling to keep the water leaking through the deck from running on you when you were in your bunk. You didn't dare take your shoes off because you might have to run for it if something happened and it started to sink.
Time is money for the boat companies. Just getting on the freighters can be an adventure.
The Ojibwe was the story about the first day I ever stepped on board a freighter. They took supplies and crew members out. The ship would come out of the locks downriver. The Ojibwe would swing up alongside of it, and then with a crane they'd boom over all the supplies, and then the relief guys would jump on. And for a new guy, it's a pretty intimidating experience pulling up alongside that big sled as it's rumbling down the river and seeing all the action on there and climbing over the rail, and then the Ojibwe pulls away and you're stuck. There you go.
Lon has so many stories about his 45-year career. He was convinced to write some of them down.
The book I just wrote called Salty, The Colorful Adventures of a Well-Seasoned Sea Dog, has some of my better ones in there. I think it's got something like 27 stories in there about my life at sea on some of the 85 boats that I've been on, and some of the just insane people that I've met along the way.
Next week, in part 2 of Lon's story, you'll hear about some of those people, storms he's been through, and how he fell in love on one of those boats. For Northern Michigan in Focus, I'm Corey Adkins.